For Gen Z, retirement may feel like a distant dream, but that does not mean it's too soon to save for it. Investing early in your career is paying yourself in the future. Whether you've already started saving or you're still trying to balance spending today with saving for the future, we break down Retirement Planning 101 right here on UBS Trending. Welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Ainsley Carbone. Well, my Gen Z workers, you are in the studio today to break down the latest about what Gen Z is thinking about retirement. So thank you all for being in the studio today. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you for having us.
So we are going to be asking some vital questions as well as I will ask some core questions, and together we are going to have a great conversation. So are you all ready to start?
Yes. So great to be here with you today, Ainsley. So I'm part of Gen Z, just started my first job post-college. I just want to know, why should I be thinking about retirement right now when it feels so far away?
That's a great question. It can feel so far away considering most Gen Z is just starting out in their career. There are so many different reasons why it's beneficial to start early. Compounding is certainly one of them. Investing earlier just makes it easier to save for the future. But another aspect that a lot of people don't think about often is that the landscape of planning for retirement is changing for those who are younger versus those who are just starting out but are now older. And the reason for that is because of Social Security. So the way Social Security works, it covers a portion of what your working income was when you're in retirement, and it is a payment that comes to you annually or monthly every year for the rest of your life. But it's changing. Right now, it's projected that the Social Security trust funds are going to be running out in 2035, which means that Social Security can only pay a portion of those monthly payments. So what that means for you is that if no reform happens, by the time you reach retirement, you're going to have a lot less of that income coming in than someone who would be retiring at that same age, but decades ago. And so what you have to do now is just save a lot more of your working income in order to make up for that shortfall. So just one of many reasons to start saving early. But I would love to kind of shift gears a little bit and learn a little bit about what you are all thinking. So Hannah, I'll start with you. Could you just maybe tell us a little bit about what Gen Z is thinking about as it relates to retirement?
Yes. I feel like as an intern, we've always been hearing about budgeting and different rule of thumbs that we should be following. And I was just wondering, as an intern with a new source of income, what should I be thinking in regards to allocating my income for discretionary spending, savings, and then also living expenses?
Yeah, there's a lot to kind of work through, and to receive an income for the first time, I think it can be a little overwhelming because first of all, you see what you're going to be paid, but then you also see what goes to the IRS, and there's a big difference between the two, which makes it that much more difficult to plan for it. But one rule of thumb that I like to use is the 50-30-20 budget, and that essentially says you're going to spend 50% of your income on needs, so rent, utilities, anything that you absolutely need, 30% on your wants, the things that you like to do for fun, like dining out or travel or entertainment, and then 20% for saving. So that is a great starting point, but it's going to be, what's right for everyone is going to be very different for someone else. I mean, if you think about it, you all are probably renting in New York City or at least in the surrounding area. Cost of living here is pretty significant, and it might be so much that it takes up more than that 50% of your income coming in. So if that's the case for you, I'd say 50-30-20 is a great place to start, and then over time, just review your spending. Review how much is going into wants, how much is going into needs, and how much is going towards saving, and adjust as needed over time. That way you can kind of find whatever it is that works right for you. So Mary, I'd love to kind of bring you into the conversation. What's top of mind?
Investing. When I hear the word investing, I'm thinking of time and risks. What would you say would be a good time for someone entering into the workforce or just recently new into the workforce to start investing? And then how should you manage that, risk tolerance and also investment goals before starting this journey?
That's a great question. So you asked when is the right time to start. I'd say as soon as possible. So if you haven't started saving yet, now is the time to do it. But of course, you want to make sure that you have that emergency fund set up beforehand, because you need to make sure you can meet today's expenses, regardless of what they are, before you start investing for the future. Once you have that, absolutely start investing if you can. But you're right in talking about investment risk in terms of time, because when we think of risk, the time in which you're saving for that future goal is going to transform the risk that you're looking at. So for instance, if I am saving for the down payment on a car, let's say, that I want to purchase in the next 6 months, cash is a great place for me to save because it's safe and it's not volatile. I know it will be there. But just because it's safe in the next 6 months does not mean that's where I want to be saving for retirement. Because if I save only in cash for retirement, well, there's not a whole lot of return there. It probably won't keep up with inflation, which just means that it's going to make it that much harder for me to save for retirement if I'm only using cash. And so that just kind of gives you an example of looking at the relationship between time and risk. But if you want to get started and you're thinking about, okay, what are my goals? You want to think about when they're going to happen, and the timing of those goals is going to help you understand your risk capacity or how much you can afford to take. And then you also want to think about, I think you mentioned risk tolerance was essentially how much you can stomach, how much volatility are you willing to take on in your portfolio. And then at that point, it's really helpful to work with a financial advisor because they can kind of help you understand, okay, how much should I be taking right now? And then they can also work with you to understand how much risk you're willing to take on. And from there, they can kind of help you find a balance to make sure it's an investment strategy that's right for those goals along that time horizon. And it's also right for you based on your behavior and how much risk you're willing to tolerate.
Yeah, that's amazing. I had a quick question. I know you mentioned emergency funds. How much should one have in their emergency fund?
So that's another great question. So based on our research, we suggest having 6 to 12 months worth of spending saved up for an emergency. That's not just for an emergency medical bill. It's also just to account for the fact that you might be unemployed at some point and you not only want to meet your needs today, but you also want to be able to keep saving for the future if you can. 12 months is a lot for someone who's just starting out. So target that 6 month. And it's also, I think we were talking about budgeting before, going through and reviewing your expenses, that's really helpful when it comes to building out that emergency fund, because you can kind of understand, okay, how much do I actually spend on a month-to-month basis, and how much of that is actually what I absolutely need. Because if you can't meet that 6 month amount for how much you're spending and saving, then I'd say a great starting point would then be to target 6 months worth of your wants to have over that 6 month period for that emergency fund.
That 6 to 12 month benchmark is super helpful, but when thinking about retirement, are there other benchmarks that Gen Z should be targeting to make sure they're on that correct path towards retirement?
So when reading the various types of research out there about retirement planning, there are so many different types of benchmarks, and I think depending on who you're asking, they'll give a different answer. But most of them are something along the lines of, by age 30, you should have 1 year's worth of your salary saved up for retirement. While that is helpful, I don't personally like to use income as a way to determine how much you need to have saved for retirement, because income doesn't really tell you a whole lot about what you're spending and how much you can afford to save. For instance, let's say you and I, we make $100,000 a year. You live in New York City, but I live at my parents' house. Mm-hmm. For us, 100,000 is going to mean a lot of two very different things in terms of how much we have to spend each month, and then how much we can afford to save each month. And so I know everyone likes to have that good rule of thumb, a good kind of baseline to go from, but it's really just important at this point, as you're kind of getting your feet on the ground, to understand, okay, what's my income? What am I spending each month? How much can I save? And then continuously work towards increasing that amount that you're saving while still, living comfortably and also having a little bit of fun as well.
And that's the great thing about having a financial advisor. They know your unique story. So I think it's super beneficial. Have your own financial advisor. They'll understand your needs, your desires, and goals.
Yes, absolutely. A great way to kind of bring it all together for you. So any other, last thoughts? Are there any concerns that either of you have that you kind of want to talk about or ask any questions before we wrap up?
Well, I was curious, to Tate's point, when do you think is an appropriate time to start looking for a financial advisor so you have that person to help you, as opposed to going off a sometimes not reliable benchmark like income for retirement savings?
So I think when you're just starting out, it can be kind of, there's not a whole lot on your balance sheet that you can kind of work with. But I think at that point, I mean, a financial advisor, if you can find one to work with, can be helpful because they can kind of lay out and look at your whole financial situation and tell you, you know, this is something that you need to be working towards, or you're spending too much in this area. And it's just kind of almost like a third party or an unbiased party that can help you kind of look through your financial situation. Because if you just go off those rules of thumb, it's kind of like if someone is, let's say, trying to lose weight and, you know, you Google online, how much am I supposed to be consuming in my calories each day? If it says, I don't know much about calories, but let's just say 2,000 calories a day. Okay, if I eat 2,000 calories worth of donuts, I'm probably not going to be able to do that consistently every single day. You need to try to figure out what works for you in a way that's going to allow you to follow that plan or follow that diet, and so that you can be consistent with it, because that consistency with your spending, with your savings, is really what's going to matter over the long term. And so again, just working with that financial advisor, they can find a plan and a strategy that works not just for your financial situation, but also your personality. So the sooner the better, I think.
Okay.
And you mentioned a little bit about how if you and Tate both made $100,000 and you live with your mom, it's different from her living in New York City. I guess my question is, in Gen Z, we have noticed that base salaries are not increasing, but housing prices and rent prices are going up. So there's this problem of, you know, thinking, are we even able to one day own a house of our own? Because it feels like that goal is so unobtainable. So how does one budget for that or set themselves up for that goal to be able to buy a house in, let's say, the next 10 years?
That's a great point. To be honest, I'm not Gen Z, but I also feel like it's very hard to buy a home. I think it's just, it's a combination of a bunch of different things, one of which just being housing prices so high right now. But I'd say, you know, always budget is a great way to understand where you're at that point in time, and just working up towards not just saving for retirement, but also making sure that you're saving somewhere like an investment account that you can tap into before your retirement age, so that you can save in something like, or you can save for something like a home within the next couple of years. But again, I know it's not the answer that you probably would like to have, because it just kind of depends, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'd love to understand, you know, where do you all feel like you're at right now? Do you feel like you're starting to think about saving for retirement, or is it really just you're trying to understand how much can I spend today versus the future?
I think personally, I'm at the stage where I'm just trying to understand how everything works. How does a 401k work? If I want to invest in the stock market, how should I go about it? And I think retirement is at the forefront of my mind, but it's not my number one priority. But I think the saving, learning how to budget, learning about the 401k, and even how it works in the first place is what I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, I think the benefits of an employer when you go and start working, it's very confusing. I even get very confused with the different aspects of it, like the different types of health insurance and disability and life insurance. So I'm going to give a shameless plug here and just tell you about a resource that we have. If you visit ubs.com/benefits insights, it's something that we update every year, and it's just a landing page that helps you understand a little bit more about the different aspects of a workplace benefit program and gives you some action items. So when you do go work after college and you're looking at that open enrollment benefits package, it just kind of helps you understand, okay, where are the items that I need to take action right now, and what are the things that I can wait on a little bit. Thank you so much, Mary, for that information. It's definitely helpful to understand kind of where you're at now. Hannah, I'd love to kind of hear from you. It's okay if you feel the same way that Mary does, or if you want to add in something about maybe what you and your friends are talking about. If you talk about money, where is your kind of head at right now with your finances?
Pretty similar to Mary. I'm just beginning to learn when and how I should start doing each different step. I think something that's super topical with Gen Z individuals is especially learning how to save if you're planning on pursuing higher education, and how you can properly reach your financial goals while also either paying for the institution you're taking part at or just not having a job at that time. But I'm really interested to hear Tate's thoughts 2 years down the line.
Yeah, following graduating from college and joining the workforce, it's definitely has been different having that full-time paycheck. And it is some cash coming in that I wasn't used to. But with that, I am now paying my own rent. So trying to balance that has definitely been an adjustment. But what I've really been focusing on is taking advantage of the tax benefits that come with all the retirement vehicles, such as a Roth or a normal IRA. So that has been my focus when I think about retirement and putting money away for down the road.
That's really helpful because I think, Tate, you are in a different scenario being in the graduate training program, and then you both are interns. So it's certainly different points in your lives, but also your financial situation. So that's really helpful. And yes, I could not agree with you more. This is something I talk about all the time, are the tax benefits of the different types of savings accounts. There are so many different accounts to choose from, and I know you were saying that, I don't know what place to start or what step to take next. I think personally, I always think, you need to have that emergency fund, and then you need to start saving for the future, whether it's for retirement or something else, as long as you just start that clock in terms of when you started investing. Doing that sooner rather than later, that's a great place to start. And if you can do that, then you're on a good track. Well, thank you all for coming. It was so nice to speak with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
For more information, visit ubs.com/views. Make sure to follow UBS on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, X, or Twitter. And check out our Instagram channel at UBS Trending for UBS content that you cannot find anywhere else. And as always, if you have any questions about your portfolio, please speak with your financial advisor. Until next time, I am Ainsley Carbone. Have a great rest of the day, and remember to keep your eyes on what's trending.